Hello everybody! So today we are doing course lesson number 13. A meaningless world engenders fear. Now in this lesson, Jesus doesn't beat around the bush. He goes directly to it. And with the thought of the day, it brings up the emotion or the fear in which we may be having within our minds. It even says in the first thought that today's idea is really another form of the preceding ones, except that it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. And so the reason a meaningless world engenders fear is because fear is a product of the ego mind. And the ego is how we have been perceiving the world. And the ego thinks that it knows what this world is and what it means and what the past means, and so it has its own meaning onto the world. And when we accept the thought, a meaningless world engenders fear, and accept the thought that this world is really meaningless, then what that does is it causes fear in ego, because that means that something else is real instead of it. Right? So it opposes the undoing of this thought system separation, and of course that engenders fear. You know, the thoughts that this world is meaningless mean that everything the ego thinks it means is not true. That's like, goodbye ego, right? And so that's frightening, and so that's why a meaningless world engenders fear. But I feel that this is one of the course lessons, because Jesus is saying it's okay. Like, it's okay that you feel fear. Like, don't run away from that fear. Be with it. Be with it. Because when we're with it, and we admit that this is where we are, and this is what we're feeling, then Jesus meets us there. The Holy Spirit meets us where we are, and then together we travel beyond the fear to the light of truth that resides within us also. So this is paving the way to make a new choice. And so that's why it's kind of awesome. And so Jesus even says here, recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. Much like what I just described, right? It's going to arouse fear because we are looking past fear to the truth and realizing that the only way we can look past our own ideas of this world is rendering our ideas and thoughts meaningless. Thus, this world is meaningless. Thus, we can now have a new answer, a new purpose, a new way of seeing this world rested upon our minds. And it even says here, it's because it represents a situation in which God and the ego challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space which meaninglessness provides. When we accept that this world is meaningless, again, it comes back to that blank slate of mind, that blank slate of awareness, right? And from that, now it's like, now it's up to question. Now it's like, okay, I'm no longer believing in what my ego told me that this world was and what this world means, so I'm open. So now I'm open to what God tells me that it is, instead of what ego tells me. And this is, again, frightening for the ego, because now we can open to that miracle. Now we can open to that true perception of what's going on here. And this is so scary for the ego. But again, we're learning to be with that fear, and ultimately by being with it and sitting with it, is how we dispel it, is how we look past it, is how the Holy Spirit shows it to us differently. So we can't run away from this. We can't hide it under and just keep pressing it down, because that's what we've been doing for the last however many centuries. Now we're ready to finally bring it up, look at it with the light, and let it be undone. So this is the beginning process of letting this be undone. And it says that the ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas there on this blank slate, fearful that the void may otherwise be used to demonstrate its own unreality. And on this alone, it is correct. So it's true that on this blank slate of awareness, now God can tell us what is true, and what we are told is true is that we're children of God, not these egos, and thus that attests to the unreality of ego, and this is the only part in which ego is correct, right? And that's why it's going to impose its own ideas on it again, make you reference the past again, make you believe in these shadowy figures again, but we're learning not to accept those as being the truth anymore. It is essential, therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. And this is what we're learning, right? To accept this wholly and without fear, because beyond the fear is the peace. So we just have to take that step beyond it to experience the peace in which we truly want. But to ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. So this again is the frantic thoughts and ideas that ego is going to want to impose on this blank slate of mind. And this is just what we're used to. This is all that we know. And it's okay if this happens. It's okay. But we just are open to learning to see that it is meaningless, and that there's something to see beyond it. So the exercise period for today, Jesus says that we need to do it maybe 3 to 4 times maximum, and only for a minute each time. And today is a little bit different, for what we're doing is going inward first and closing our mind, closing our eyes, and repeating the idea for today, which is, I am looking at a meaningless world. And as we repeat that a few times in our mind is when we open up our eyes. And we continue to say this affirmation, this thought, with our eyes open as we look around the room. And then, after we do that for about a minute or so, then we close our eyes again, and we'll conclude that minute with the thought, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I am in competition with God. Now that's quite a powerful thought there that Jesus wants us to conclude our practice period with. And he says, just, say it once, let yourself sit with that, and at first you might feel a lot of resistance, you might feel a lot of avoidance to it, but he says that whatever resistance comes up, then just let it be an opportunity to sit with it and move beyond it, and to not really pay much attention to it, except letting it, drift on by. He says, do not dwell on the concluding statement, and try not to even think of it except during the exercise periods. That will suffice at present. And the reason that we are doing this is because we want to become aware of the cause-effect relationship with our world and our mind. And we're now allowing ourselves to see and experience that the cause is in our mind and the effect is in our experience. So if we do have these fearful thoughts in our mind, that's okay, but we're going to see a fearful world. That's just the way that it is. So by applying today's lesson, we are opening to having love as a source in our mind, so that we have love in our experience, in our outer world. So Jesus is calling us home, calling us to love, and all we need to do is answer that call, and we are with this course lesson today. So with that, we are going to hold this thought in our minds throughout the day. A meaningless world engenders fear, and let ourselves remember that we are here to remember it through the eyes of love. And that is all. So I love you all. Thank you. Bye.